The flea market at Clignancourt was at the far northern edge of the city, a few blocks past the final stop on the number 4 metro, where the Parisian architecture grew more simple, more mundane. A reminder that not all of the city was steeped in centuries of history and romance. Some of it was just where people went to work and took their kids to school and bought their bread in plain old supermarkets instead of quaint boulangeries. Bea had come to the flea market in search of gifts for her family. Maybe some lace for her mother, or vintage records for her brother Duncan, but she also hoped she might find some etchings for herself. Or even better, some children's books with hand-tipped illustrations to read with her stepfather to her new baby nephew. Her friends in her study abroad program had raved about their flea market finds, so Bea thought it was worth a trip, even if there was no chance of buying chic vintage clothes like the ones they had modeled for her. It was hard enough for Bea to shop in America, let alone here in Paris, where it was almost unthinkable to see a woman on the street who couldn't be described as bird-boned. After years of practice, Bea thought she'd mastered the art of being large and invisible at the same time. The dark, baggy clothes, the quiet manner, the downward gaze. When she arrived as a freshman at UCLA and found herself surrounded by lithe, toned Californians, she was afraid she'd stand out like a bulbous blemish on a glassy complexion. But the LA culture of self-obsession made it easier than she expected to slip by unseen. In Paris, though, she felt eyes everywhere she went. The city was so beautiful, Bea's favorite place she'd ever been. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that the entire population was noticing her, judging her, preferring silently that she would leave. Waiters and booksellers in cramped cafes and shops, narrow aisles stuffed with tables and wares, Bea stepping carefully sideways to avoid toppling someone else's plate of pain au chocolat, salivating at the sound of those crunchy, buttery pastries that waif-like Parisians relished each morning without a second thought. Whenever Bea stepped into a patisserie to order something for herself, there were ripples of sideward glances, even occasional bald stares. The accusation always implied, "It's your own fault you look like this." It was easier when she got farther out from the center of the city, into the diverse neighborhoods by the canal where the streets were wider and the pace was slower, where groups of students laughed and drank wine from paper cups on big concrete blocks by the water. It was similar at Clignancourt, Bea thought, as she made her way down the few blocks from the metro to the flea market, while people hurried by, too focused on their own lives to pause to sneer at her. Bea couldn't tell what the flea market was like from the outside. For a solid block, she could see only the back walls of the stalls, dark slabs of plywood and plasterboard, and she started to feel skeptical that this market could possibly be as extraordinary as her friends had insisted. But once she found the entrance, she understood. It was like stepping through Alice's looking glass into an entirely other place, where everything was wonderful and strange. The market was a maze, with pathways that cut at haphazard diagonals. Whichever way Bea turned, she never seemed to pass the same stalls twice. Each new alley bringing untold bins of brass knobs and walls of antique oil paintings and spools of silken ribbon. The stalls themselves didn't feel makeshift. Some were covered in ivy or string lights. Others had stucco walls and wooden shelves piled high with leather-bound books, so dusty Bea imagined they'd been there for decades. Wandering the market's aisles, Bea felt a sense of belonging she'd never experienced anywhere else in Paris. Or maybe, she considered, it was just that everything there was so lovely and bizarre that nothing and no one could be out of place. Before Bea realized how much time had passed, the sun was starting to set, so she made her way toward the edge of the market as proprietors packed up their stalls. Bea hadn't stopped by a single clothing purveyor, but near the market's exit, one stall caught her eye. It was filled exclusively with capes. Racks and racks of heavy brocades and soft furs and embroidered silks. Bea cast the stall a longing glance, but it wasn't any use. She was sure that no cape in the place was big enough to cover her body, that instead of cocooning her in luxury, the capes would simply hang off her back, like a child playing dress-up with a beach towel fastened at the neck. But the shopkeeper, A reedy, androgynous Frenchwoman in her 60s, in oversized black glasses, saw Bea looking and took a step toward her.